So you're game planning for a new opponent. What's one of the first questions that you usually ask when you're sitting there and looking at a defense? If I line up at this formation, what am I going to get? I think oftentimes we as coaches get a little bit polarized because we start looking for teams that run the same stuff that we do, and then naturally we sit there and say, okay, so we run a trips formation, they run a trips formation, this is how they're going to be able to defend it. But in this video, I'm going to walk you through a strategy that I learned from Scott Frost that I think really helps in breaking your stuff down and focusing on what you guys do best in order to create a new game plan week to week. Alright, so in my opinion, the first step of game planning is we need to look at what we do best and then create a game plan around that in order to go against each opponent. So the first step is going to be look at our run game. What are our 5-man run concepts that we run on a regular basis? And what are our 6-man run concepts that we run on a regular basis? I definitely recommend writing them down or having some form of visual representation so you can see what your core beliefs and core run plays are. Now I would do the same for the pass game, and I would split that up into a 1-man surface pass concept, 2-man surface pass concept, and 3-man surface pass concept. Now I think the majority of that is going to be your quick game, which is something I'm a huge believer in. I really think quick game dictates the entire offense. And then the next step is going to be your full field stuff, which is likely going to be play action. Now once you have a bank of all of your 5-man, 6-man runs, and 1, 2, and 3 surface concepts in the quick game as well as your play action, now we can get into how we're going to actually get into those. So I think instead of just sitting there and trotting out your regular 2x2 set or your regular 3x1 set, you need to be able to see what formations are going to give you the best leverage while still utilizing that same personnel in order for you to get to those concepts. So a big one for me would be if you have a trips concept that you really like, let's say stick for example. How can you get to that if you lining up in a regular trips formation doesn't give you leverage? One addition to me would be maybe you move that slot receiver in and utilize him as a wing type player. Those types of variations I think are going to be really good in being able to help you stay with those concepts and move into doing what you do rather than just wholesale changing the stuff that you're doing week to week. I really got a glimpse of this when I saw a practice plan and was able to get a little bit more information from how Scott Frost does this. So Scott Frost, if you know anything about UCF and Nebraska, they consistently do a lot of the same stuff. So they have their QB power game that they end up running week to week, especially with Adrian Martinez, and then they have their quick pass game, which is going to be a lot of bubbles and things like that. They don't really change a whole lot week to week, but the biggest thing that they do is they out-leverage you because they change the way they align in those formations and utilize motion to be able to get there. So one of the biggest things I learned from Scott Frost is they have a specific designated pre-practice drill, basically formations, where they go through the new formations that they're going to put in each week. They utilize those formations differently in terms of variation and where people are aligned to allow them to get to their same stuff. So instead of putting in a new play concept each week and finding a hole in how the team covers 2x2 4 verts, they sit there and they move guys around, whether it's motion or just utilizing splits. So that way you're able to get an advantage with leverage to run the same plays that you're normally doing. So I'm going to throw up his practice schedule and kind of walk you through this a little bit. So down on the bottom, you'll see that there's a box that's labeled formations. Those are going to be all of the new style formations that they're going to sit there and utilize each week to get to their play concepts that they want to be able to stick to. Those new formations and motions allow them to get to their base plays while not changing any type of concept or putting in any new plays week to week, but just sitting there and changing how they align so that way you can out-leverage the defense. Again, a big takeaway that I had is if you look up at the top of the script in the pre-practice section, at 8:55 they have a period just designated to lining up in those new formations. So that way the guys know that this is how we're going to align in this new formation. When I first saw this, it really got me thinking about how many guys, you're creating your playbook at the beginning of the season and you have 15 plays of different formations that you want to be able to teach at the beginning of the season. I think the best way to be able to teach is going to be your 5-man run concept, your 6-man run concept, and then your surface and play action plays, and then your formation week to week and where those guys align are going to be the big differences on how you get to those concepts. in the game. I think subconsciously we just watch film and see, oh, they aligned to trips, this is how we're going to do it, because it's a lot easier for us to just mimic and copy the film that we see, rather than sitting there and saying, okay, so the trips concepts that we run don't necessarily fit because we get out leveraged. But if we move that slot receiver into the backfield, it creates a favorable matchup for us to run that same base concept that we stick to. I think along with splits in motion, the other way to really mess with people is, okay, this week I'm going to have this slot receiver line up on the outside in some of these particular formations. I think those areas are really, it's a stronger way to create diversity in what you do without teaching new plays and new concepts week to week. I think it also benefits down the road, because if you sit there and think of a team who's game planning against your offense, if you've run 16 different formations over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to sit there and probably write down every formation that you're utilizing, and that's going to give them more to think about. But again, you're still running those same few play concepts that you do every single week. So this whole thing, it all comes back to self-scout over opponent scout. I think oftentimes we get too stuck in thinking about the opponent scout world, and we take away from just focusing on ourselves and what we could do better week to week. If you need a few other tips on game planning, make sure to check out my video up here, which I went over Coach Andy Kotelnicki from Buffalo. And also check down in the description. I will put the Scott Frost practice plan that I showed you, I will put it into the Google Drive for you guys to be able to take advantage of. Hopefully I got you to think just 1% differently throughout this video. Good luck.